Hey, don't be like this, please. Hang on. Everything was completely fine the past couple of streams. Oh, please don't be like this. Kind of fitting, though, if we're honest. Hang on. All right. Well. Hey, there it is. Let's see if it runs even remotely decent. What's up, guys? Friday. It's Friday. It's Friday. We're going to look at these RCinpower 1002 19,000s tonight. Moderators, please prevent me from completely losing my mind. And you know exactly what I mean. In the chat, Crom was first. Cole Powers, Bob Bruce, I've had to restart the computer already. So I lost a bunch of the chat. But hello, all the Kiddison, Pito801, Bob Bruce, Frank Nicholas, Gusto FPV, Douglas 6, Thrash FPV, Spaceman Spiff, Doubles FPV, K-Row, Curtis Hayes, Scotty Scott, Cloudhopper, Freelojo, Thrash again, Gusto, Decaba Cow, Random Videos Daily, Smoking Dog, Cujo, Preston Roach, Uriel, Dave S, Kevin J. What's up? If you want to talk to me in the chat, all you got to do is type CiottiFPV. If you want to support me, head on over to CiottiFPV.com, and there's a million things that you can do. Scotty Scott says, what's up? Uriel says, can you tell? Kevin J says, hello. Pito says, JFYI solution. JFYI. Oh, I think just FYI. For motors not starting at full battery was to lower startup power. Interesting. Good troubleshoot, dude. For 28,000 kV, 1100 min, 1200 max worked. For 40,000, I had to go even lower. The issue was only with higher capacity batteries. Yeah, the higher capacity batteries are not going to sag as much. So that makes sense. Super cool. That makes a lot of sense. Thrash FPV says, can you recommend the Air 5-in-1 for durability? Hell no, at this point, or is it still too early to truly tell? The big problem with not just the Air 5-in-1, but all of the new AIOs, all of the new ultra lightweight AIOs. Basically, when I say that, I just mean both of the BetaFPV ones and the Happy Model one, because this is happening on all of them. Is the UFL ports are super fragile, to the point where, like, you just shouldn't remove if it comes with an antenna on the UFL port, you should leave that antenna. You should E6000 it down, and that's it. That is the antenna that board has forever. I think it actually makes the most sense to buy the BetaFPV Air 5-in-1 by itself, not a part of the bind and fly. And then it should come without an antenna snapped to it. Get yourself an ORT Micro V and snap that on there. E6000 it down, and then that's the antenna that thing has forever. Although here's the problem with that. The problem with that is going to be that the Micro V antenna, you're going to have to feed it through the canopy, and it's not going to be able to go through. This head on the antenna is going to be too big to go through any of the holes in the canopies. So if you ever need to switch canopies, you're going to have to remove that antenna, and that's going to potentially rip that UFL port off. So yeah, I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, it's the 2G4 is still available all over the place. Weebleed has them. I think Pyrodrone and GetFPV both have them as well. It's not that much heavier than the Air 5-in-1 and the new Happy Model Super X. So just run that. I will not spend a dime on either of the new AIOs, just because of how fragile the UFL ports are. It's just silly. That's just insane that you can't unplug and plug antennas without ripping the UFL port off. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. Every Day with Bruno says, good day, hope all is well. Bruno, nothing is well. Nothing is well. Abraham says, what's up? Cloudhopper says, have you tried the X12 Pro AIO yet? Picked up a few and have built one so far. It's been too rainy to fly it yet. I forget what the difference is between the X12 and the X12 Pro, but I have not tried it yet. If I buy another X12, it will be the X12 Pro. I think the X12 Pro is only available on AliExpress, and I don't order from overseas anymore. Yeah. Uriel says, spit it out. You're in a bad mood. Every Day with Bruno says, pal pay. Thank you, dude. Speaking of, I assume this is you, Bruno. Bruno Arroyo, welcome to the Gangly Gang, man. Thank you for the support, joining the Patreon. Very, very cool of you, man. Oh, I gotta jump on that. Mark is on red. Bruno with a $20 PayPal. Thank you, dude, so much. He says $10 for you, $10 for Teddy. Thank you, dude. Very, very cool. Let's, in honor of Bruno. There we go. Teddy eats well tonight. Thank you, dude. Very, very cool. And yeah, like I said, welcome to the Gangly Gang, brother. You're gonna love it. Sleepy CBR jumping back onto the PayPal thing, or whatever it is, the website, Patreon. Welcome back to the Gangly Gang, friend. Not that you ever really left. Jesus. Other than this is completely off limits, as I'm sure that you guys can already tell and know, but I'm putting two things into the chat that you guys should watch, unless you're a coward. The thing that I just put into the chat, if you're not a coward, watch it. It says everything that needs to be said absolutely perfectly. If you are on the right side of this, I'm going to put something into the chat now. These are both in general on Discord. If you're on the right side of this, but you're not willing to punch somebody in the face, I want you to watch what I just put into the chat. It's very important. If you have anybody in your life, I have a funny feeling that you guys are all good, but if you have one of these people in your life that's like, oh, it just ignore it. Everything is going to be fine. Like, the second thing that I just put is what you should try to get in front of them, because it's just not enough. It's not enough to just. I'm gonna leave it there. Watch those two things. They are two of the best things that I've seen. Doubles says you're not alone. A lot of us are numb right now. We got each other. Yeah. Northern Tier says with you, man, all the way. All right, that's it. We're not. Actually, all right. So Free Lojo and Frank, you're the only moderators. It's looking like in chat. Just be as don't ban anybody, but time people out, and I'll see that. I'm moving on. I need you guys to be like there. On top of it, because I'm just, the anger is starting to come, and yeah, I don't. It doesn't. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Thank you. For most of you guys, thank you. You know why. I've really tried super hard over the last 6 months to be much less outspoken about this stuff. Frankly, because it's not good for my business, and I'm basically just not successful enough to be able to just say fuck it and just fly off the handle all the time anymore. And so I don't want that to start tonight. Because if it's gonna happen one night, it's gonna be tonight. Hey, I've got some stuff, and we're gonna move on. Aber, you're not the one that's gonna get timed out, brother, for saying that. Aber the Ham with a 19.99 super chat. Thank you, dude. He says, "A feeler, bro. Spit his flux out here." Thank you, dude. I have a couple things that I don't necessarily know if I'm going to bother putting on the Etsy store. Eventually, maybe I will. This is a TS100. Although this soldering iron tip works on a lot of stuff. This is a very interesting soldering iron tip. This is Drew Camden's favorite, which is why I got it. And I just it's nice. Don't get me wrong, but I just like the regular flat one better that I've been using forever. This one's nice because you'll get a bigger contact patch. You'll get a bigger contact patch with the work from this. There you go. And you can still use like the sharp tip part. I used this a few times and then decided that the regular flat tip is what I want. Is what I'm going to use. But yeah, you guys might like it. Like I said, it's Drew's favorite, so I know it's, you know, some people will like it. So there's that. I have this beat up set of VCI 0802.8 27,000s. If you just want to see what this motor size flies like, perfect. If you want your footage to not have jello, not perfect. If you're going to buy a set of these motors and you would like an extra set of stators for them, perfect. These stators are completely fine. 2 of these motors have significantly bent motor shafts that will cause jello with HD footage. I'm pretty picky with this stuff. Most people will probably be totally okay with this set of motors, but I'm just telling you right off the bat, these 2 of the motor shafts are bent more than what I'm willing to put up with. The other 2 motors are pretty decent, but these motors have been crashed a bunch, and they only have 1mm motor shaft, so fair warning. These will be super cheap, but yeah, you're not going to have vibration-free footage, even on analog. But they're not so bad that they don't fly. Like, the rig will totally fly fine. It's just that you will start to get some vibrations at certain throttle values in your flight footage. But the PID loop can handle them, and so, like I said, if you just want to fly these motors to see what they're like, this will totally work for you. Charles Adams, thank you for joining the Patreon, dude. Very, very cool of you. Welcome to the Gangly Gang, my friend. I've also got a set of M4. M4. Oh, for God's sakes, I forget the name of these stick ends, but these are the Weebleed versions of them. These are resin printed stick ends. I actually really like these. I was really looking forward to using these, but I got the wrong ones. These are M4. The QX7 is M3. So yeah, these are absolutely brand new. And they come with the little nuts to lock them down. And then I have a set of these Newbie Drone Flow 0804 14,000 kV motors. That, yeah, I don't know. These are the motors that came with the 03 carrying Newbie Drone rig. So if you have that build and you want some extra motors, some extra bells, some extra stators, these are good to go. These are brand new. I put like 3 batteries through these. So these are as good as new. Cool. Uriel, I just read what you wrote, but I'm moving on. I appreciate it though. Ray's saying hi. Frank Nicholas says type his online name accurately in chat like this, CiottiFPV. So thank you for that, Frank. Mario Beans, there you go, Mario. You got it on that one. Yep, at CiottiFPV or just CiottiFPV. You got to spell it right, and you don't want to put spaces in there. You can do that. If you guys want to see what the orange highlight looks like, just type your own name into your chat comment, and you'll be able to see for yourself that it lights up in orange. But yeah, that's it. You guys can do that with each other. If somebody wants to get Raze FPV's attention, in your chat message, type RAZE space FPV, and for Raze, his own name will light up in orange. Mario Bean says, do you have a live stream that shows your Betaflight setup for a 2S Walksnail build? You know, it's a good question. I don't know if I ever went through Betaflight. Let's just do it now. Maybe. Here's how you would find it. Here's a really cool little YouTube trick that I didn't know about until very, very recently. When you're on someone's channel, there's a little magnifying glass here that's like kind of hard to see. When you click this, you can search in just that person's channel. So like for your question, I would search for 2S Walksnail, right? And then it's going to pull up all of the live streams that have 2S and Walksnail in the title of the stream, in the description, or I think even in the comments, right? So like in theory, this live stream here, finishing the 2S Walksnail freestyle whoop, this probably has the Betaflight setup in it. But we're working on that rig tonight. So I'm just going to plug into it and we'll take a look, because I have changed the Betaflight setup a little bit on that build since then. I've dialed it in a little bit more. And so, yeah, that video probably has it pretty damn close to perfect. But there could be like one or two simple things. I'm going to blast through this because you guys can just pause on each one of these screens for it. Don't copy my rates over. Figure your own rates out. Don't copy my tune over. Figure your own tune out. You'll barely need to tune a 2S Walksnail 75mm rig though, because 2S is so powerful. The response time is so good. Yeah, you won't really need it. Also, don't copy stuff like the ports over unless you're going to use the exact same AIO and unless you're going to solder up to the exact same pads on the AIO. But here you go. Here's the setup, top to bottom. You can pause on each one of these screens, take a screenshot, whatever you need to do. But yeah, this is my 2S setup. This is using the BetaFPV, I want to say 12 amp. Yeah, 12 amp 1 to 2S AIO version 3. Feel safe, you don't really need to see. Presets, you don't really need to see. Wow, I've really pushed the PIDs. Yeah, I mean, it flies totally fine on the stock PIDs, but I like seeing how far that I can push the PID tune to eliminate absolutely every molecule of prop wash. With the 19,000 kV motors, you're going to want this motor output limit down here at around 70 to 80 or so. So yeah. Again, don't copy my rates. Don't copy the throttle midpoint. If you want to use Throttle Expo, watch my live stream about Throttle Expo. The Throttle Expo amount is not build dependent. It is build and pilot dependent. And it's also location dependent. If you fly it in a small spot, the throttle midpoint is going to need to be adjusted if you set it flying at a medium-sized spot or a big spot. So if you're going to use Throttle Expo, you really need to understand it. And I spent like 45 minutes to an hour on a live stream a while ago. Just search my channel for Throttle Expo. You'll find it very easily. Yeah, if you're not going to take the time to understand Throttle Expo, don't use it. Zero this out right here. Instead of 0.4, just set it to 0 and don't use Throttle Expo. If you don't fully understand Throttle Expo and you try to use it, you will make the situation worse. I guarantee it. Throttle Expo is either absolutely dialed in perfectly and it's helping you, or it's a little bit off, or it's way off and it's hurting you. So either understand it, put the work in, spend a little bit of time, really, digest it, or just don't use it. Setting the midpoint all the way down to 0, Cheatonian, is an interesting way to adjust the hover point, but unfortunately, in the process of adjusting the hover point, you're going to reduce the amount of throttle resolution that you've got. So if the hover point is so bad that the rig is almost unflyable, using a 0 midpoint, basically what you're going to the situation you're going to have to balance what's worse, the throttle resolution or the hover point. If the hover point is so bad that you're willing to sacrifice making the throttle resolution worse, then you can do that. If not, if the throttle resolution is already a problem or it's just not good or whatever, yeah, I wouldn't do it, because setting that midpoint at 0, it makes the throttle resolution better at like 1% throttle at the very bottom of the curve. And we don't spend any time at 1% throttle. So the improvement is going to be all the way at 0, 1, 2% throttle. And then, as we know with Throttle Expo, there's a tiny little area that gets a benefit, and then the rest of the throttle is hurt by Throttle Expo. This is why you guys need to understand it. We didn't talk. Cheetonian's asking a great question. I can tell that he understands Throttle Expo. In that video, we did not talk about setting the midpoint to 0, and we haven't really talked too much about it. So it's actually a really good question. So yeah, I wouldn't suggest it, again, unless you've got a rig where the hover point is like so unbelievably low that it's hard to fly. So yeah. Filter settings, again, very, very specific unless you have the absolute identical build with the exact same gyro. This looks like it's an ICM gyro by the filtering that I have set up. Don't just copy and paste. Receiver tab isn't really going to do much of anything for you, but there it is. Modes, again, they're pretty individualized. I mean, I guess you can copy my modes. It's whatever. There you go. Adjustments, I have this set up where I have this OSD that I can like turn off, and that's what I have set up here in the adjustments. Motors tab, there's not a whole lot you're gonna get from there. Here's my OSD. And then since it's a Walksnail build, it's not going to use the VTX table. Just to double check on the gyro, if you ever want to look at what your gyro is, just type status into the CLI. And then in the middle here, it's going to tell you what your gyro is. And just as I suspected, it's the ICM 42688. So there you go. There's the full setup, brother. I also have crash recovery turned on. Here's the crash recovery setup. You might need to shift these things around a little bit, but this works pretty good on most rigs. I use crash recovery on everything now, even outdoor rigs. I haven't put it on any big stuff, but like as I get stuff into Betaflight, if I can remember, I add it. It works really, really well. Good question, Mario Beans. King Dingling says, I ordered some 1102 3-hole stators tonight in 17,000 kV from AMAX and noticed they had some 20,000 kV stator bases. If I wasn't balls deep into 2S, I'd have gotten some. Nice. 17,000 kV for an 1102 that you're going to run on 2S is kind of perfect. You might be able to run that at 100% throttle. I would still limit it to like 90 first. But yeah, 17,000 kV is arguably perfect, which is pretty cool. Mario also says, what do you think of the Super X HD ELRS for 2S builds? Timmons, who created the Batwing camera mount for us, he sent me a Super X to try on 2S, and I haven't had a chance yet. It's actually sitting right over here. it's like on deck. It's gonna get used, and we will absolutely try it out. Yeah, I'm actually putting it right over here. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm gonna put that onto an analog build that I'm gonna use this canopy from Thingiverse that holds the Insta360 Go 2. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see what that's like. What's cool about this is that RunCam Nano 3 slots in here. And I'll be able to fly it around as a 2S rig, just analog, for fun. Yes, this is a little bit of a heavier canopy, but it'll be a 2S analog rig, so it'll absolutely hammer. And like weirdly, this whole thing will kind of protect it. Yeah, this will be neat. I've had this for a while, and I just haven't known where to put it. But now I do. Let me get this guy unplugged. It's just sitting here banging away on the battery. Or on the, yeah, whatever. Words are hard. That doesn't power the Walksnail, does it? No, it doesn't. All right, good. Yeah. Cheatonian also says, thanks, makes sense. It came from a Rosser video. I think it's his default setup. Really? That's weird. That might be why he bounces so much. When you watch him fly, he bounces around a lot. And that's making it a lot. That is absolutely going to make that a lot worse. I just assumed it's because, you know, in the list of things in FPV that you can choose to put your time into, he obviously puts his time into the engineering side, product development, and doesn't, you know, go out and fly hundreds, thousands of batteries. So yeah, I just assumed that was the main thing. But yeah, if he's using throttle expo with a 0 midpoint, that's going to make his throttle resolution significantly worse, and that's going to make that elevation control much more challenging. And yeah, I watched his video on the new AOS Cine rigs the other day. And yeah, he was when he was flying him at the end of the video, he was bouncing around quite a bit. Curtis Hayes says, I just built a 3S TP3 with T-Motor 1303 5000s. Will it fly on 2S as well? I mean, it'll fly, but it's on 2S, you would want to be up at, I think, like 8,000 kV. It kind of depends on what propellers you run on it, how big they are, how pitchy they are. But yeah, that'll be gnarly on 3S. That'll be great on 3S. On 2S, it'll be like just float around and yeah. Freelojo says, I'm looking for my fusion container that has the chip in it. The cats have knocked it somewhere. No worries. Thank you, dude. Don't go crazy looking for it. But yeah, I appreciate it. Islander FPV says, have you seen the new Gep RC T-Cube 18? I think we were looking at that. Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Why is the application... Wow. This is insane. Canon... I hope Canon burns in hell for this. That's a bit much, but... Hang on, let me see if I can get this pitiful excuse for a piece of software that runs Canon cameras working. Oh yeah, all I had to do was read the rest of your message, Islander. Motors look interesting. 1002 25,000s. Don't see them listed individually yet, but keeping an eye on them. Yeah, we were looking at that. on a previous stream. I don't remember where. Super exciting. I will Sleepy CBR. Thank you for the super chat, my friend. He says treats for Teddy. Much appreciated, man. Hey, look, we'll get another 15 minutes out of this dog shit software before it dies again. Thank you, dude, and welcome back to the Gangly Gang. Much appreciated. There it is. Teddy's eating better than his mom and dad tonight. I will say this, Islander. I talked to Gruss FPV, Tyler, from Rotor Riot at Rampage earlier this year. He's been on a similar quest to try to figure out 1S Walksnail 75mm rigs, how to get decent runtime, decent power, no jello. We talked quite a bit about it. He had T-Motor make him a bunch of prototype 1002s in higher KVs, 25,000, 27,000, 29,000, I believe are the three sizes that he'd mentioned. And basically, he had the exact same experience as me trying other motors that are higher KV, which is that by the time you get a motor that has enough power, the runtime goes to hell. And so that was, for me, kind of the nail in the coffin of 1S Walksnail 75. The beginning of the live stream, I completely forgot to mention this, but the beginning of the live stream was that build. This is my 1S Walksnail build. It is you have to fly it in a very specific way. You don't have to, but it works really well if you fly it the way that you saw me flying it at the intro of the live stream, which is basically that you fly it like an RC car, forward, backward, left, and right. If you go to change altitude, you do it slowly. When you go full throttle on this thing to try to throw it up over something, it's dog shit. And then when you chop the throttle, it falls out of the air like a sack of hammers. And then trying to catch it before it hits the ground, you got to hammer the throttle really early and just let it sit. It just doesn't have great power to weight ratio. Motors that allow this to have a good power to weight ratio eat the 450 mAh 1S batteries in less than 2 minutes, which is really hard on the batteries and just kind of sucks. And so at that point, it's like, well, why not go up to a 550 mAh battery? Well, then the power to weight ratio goes back to hell because the 550 mAh battery is way heavier than the 450s. So there's a limit to each amount of voltage, right? There's a limit to how much performance you can get out of 1S before it's the wrong battery. There's a limit to 2S. There's a limit to 3S, right? A bunch of years ago with 4S on 5-inch rigs, we got to see that. When we wanted more performance, 4S was done. We went up to 1,500 mAh batteries, 1,700, 1,800 mAh batteries, and it just wasn't there. 4S, that amount of voltage was the limiting factor. And then as soon as we went up to 6S, we were good to go. Like, those problems sort of went away. That's the exact same thing that we've run into with 1S, which is kind of cool because, like, it means that we're finding the limits, right? And that's like a really good thing. There's a lot to be learned from that. And so yeah, in my opinion, for the flight performance that I'm looking for, 1S is not it for these Walksnail rigs. 65, 75 doesn't matter. I have one of each, and I've pushed both of them to the absolute bitter limit. I've spent hundreds of hours, I'm not exaggerating that, hundreds of hours trying to get the perfect 1S Walksnail 65 and 75 millimeter setups, and it's just not there. I've gotten them as good as I possibly can. The 65 millimeter rig is on 0702 40,000 kV motors. That rig has the power to weight ratio that I want. It actually flies really decent, but the battery life sucks. And so when I fly it, I have to back off and just fly it more gentle. And then a couple times per battery, I can hammer full throttle when I absolutely need it. But if I fly that thing hard, it just annihilates the batteries in like a minute and a half, and the batteries come off of there so hot that they're being damaged. On the 75 millimeter rig, I went the other direction, where it does not have a powertrain that makes me happy, that gives me enough power to weight ratio, gives me enough flight performance. Mainly because the only motors that will do that are 1 millimeter motor shaft, and the motor shafts just bend all over the place. So this setup is handcuffed by the motor selection from a durability standpoint. And the best that I've found are these BetaFPV 1102 22,000 kV motors. And for what you saw me doing in the intro of this live stream, this is actually very fun. Just like the 65 millimeter rig is very fun, as long as you fly it in the very specific way that it needs to be flown, which is kind of annoying, right? Like, we are admittedly very spoiled. We have a lot of builds in FPV that we can have it all. We can fly them gentle and get 4, 5, 6 minutes of runtime, or we can fly them hard and get fantastic flight performance. We just, in order to have that scenario, you have to be, the voltage has to be right. The parts that are available have to be smartly chosen. And yeah, with 1S dragging around all the extra weight of Walksnail, it's just not possible. But on 2S, it absolutely is. And this thing is unbelievable. It doesn't weigh much more than the 1S rig, which is insane. It only weighs like 3 grams extra. So in terms of like flying it in really small, tight spaces, it's completely fine. What's interesting is, from a throttle resolution standpoint, because this has so much power, so much extra power, it is actually a little bit harder to fly in those small spaces, in the same way that like all other rigs that we fly that have good power to weight ratios, that fly good, are a little bit more challenging to fly in super tight spaces. The 1S rig here, it has crazy throttle resolution because at full throttle it doesn't make a lot of power, and that inherently makes it easier to fly in really small spaces, but it doesn't fly good anywhere else. Like, it flies really good in small spaces. If you put the nose down and just cruise it around, it's kind of fun, but this thing flies good all the time. And if you're gonna fly it exclusively in small spaces, all you have to do is nail the throttle expo down and add a whole bunch of it. So if I was gonna like spend a couple of batteries flying this just in the front garden through those tiny little spots, I would just crank the throttle expo to the fucking moon, make sure it's set absolutely perfect, and then I'd be able to get the same amount of throttle resolution from this as I have from this. But at full throttle, this would have a massive explosion of power that this does not. So this is better in every way. See what I'm saying? So, yeah. I actually do not recommend that you do this build. I do not recommend that you build a 1S Walksnail anything, really. The 65, okay, maybe. because there is no other option. We can't go up to 2S on a 65 millimeter rig. So if you're desperate for a Walksnail rig that you can fly inside the house, the 65 millimeter build, sure, I get it. But this, though, I don't recommend you do this at all. Do this. This is better in every way than this. I'm leaving. This basically represents. This is just my extra Walksnail VTX and my extra beta cross style AIO. If I pull this thing apart, they're just gonna. Those two things are just gonna sit in a box as my backups. So I might as well have them together, and if somebody asks me about it, I can fly it live on stream, or every once in a while I fly it and I can show you guys the flight footage and have this conversation. But yeah, I don't really recommend that anybody do this 1S Walksnail 75mm build, because the 2S build is just so much better in every way, and it's not going to cost you any extra money. It'll cost you a little bit of extra money because the 2S batteries are a couple bucks more, but it's well worth it. It's well worth the improvement in efficiency, flight time, well, the same thing, performance, thrust, all that stuff. Cool. But yeah, I'm not going to take this apart because I have the motors, I have this stuff. It kind of is what it is. Make sense? Hey, if you want any of the stuff that I was talking about that's for sale that I haven't put on the Etsy store, just message me. Raise FPV. No, hold on. Sleepy CBR, thank you again for the treats for Teddy. Thrash FPV says, just got the new Tiny Whoop prop popper. It's so amazing. Yeah, it really is. I unfortunately broke my clone popper, and they are out of stock. You can kind of see the little broken foot here. In fairness, I was really cranking on this. This was as much my fault as anything else. The clone popper and the new prop popper that's all metal, they have this really thin part that slides in between the bell and the prop, which I really like. This is a lot easier to get in there. I was using this on the 2S toothpick, which has Newbie Drone 1102s with 1.5mm motor shafts, and I had really pushed the propellers onto it way too hard. I had not drilled the props out. They were 2.5-inch bi-blades. And yeah, it is my fault for not having drilled them out. And then it was doubly my fault for taking this prop popper that obviously has a really thin piece of metal here and really just it was in between the motor and the bell, and I was just cranking on it. And yeah, and it let go. So my recommendation is going to be, when the clone popper comes back in stock, get one, or get the brand new prop popper. You'll see. It's got the thin little thing. Have one of these, because these are so good for 1mm motor shafts, and for if you're not a dummy and you actually drill your propellers out. Also, pick up one of the other prop poppers. This is the Weebleed one. Get one of the other prop poppers that has the thicker thing here. And if you ever are pulling a propeller off with the one with the thin foot and you're starting to really crank on it, stop and grab this one that's got the thicker foot on it, and use this one to really crank those props that are hard to get off. Yeah, the clone popper and the new Tiny Whoop prop popper are the only ones that have the super thin foot on them. I have removed hundreds of propellers with the clone popper with no problem whatsoever. It wasn't until this toothpick and me just absolutely laying into it that I broke the damn thing. So yeah, best case scenario, have two of them, one with the thin, one with the thicker. And if you have a super stubborn prop, use the thicker one. I now have 0.99 millimeter and 1.5 millimeter drill bits back in stock. I will get them back up on the Etsy store at some point here. If you're desperate for them, just message me and let me know whatever else you want from Etsy. And you can just PayPal me. I'll tell you the total and I'll send them to you. If you don't have drill bits to drill your propellers out, you're just going to waste your own money and time, because you are every single time the only propeller that fits properly is the Gemfan 1210 1 millimeter version. The 1.5 millimeter version that's brand new on Weebleed needs to be drilled out. It fits too tight. If you are using any propeller other than the Gemfan 1210 1 millimeter, you are hurting your motors, and you are going to fuck a motor up, and that is $10. You've just wasted $10. The drill bits on my website, I think they're $5 each. So you can spend $10 on 2 drill bits and not ruin your motors, or you can ruin your motors. And if you ruin a motor that you can't buy individually, you just cost yourself $40. There's just no reason. If you're going to fly tiny whoops, if you're going to fly rigs with 1 millimeter and 1.5 millimeter motor shafts where you're not using T-mount screws, it's an absolute no-brainer. You are costing yourself money if you're not drilling the propellers out. Basically, if you are ever pushing a propeller on and you can't do it like easily like this, and you're starting to use your thumb, you're starting to lift your elbow, you're starting to make faces, you're starting to use your like arm and chest muscles, you're about to ruin that motor. I guarantee you. You're not going to ruin it right now. You are going to get that propeller on, but in the process of getting that propeller on, you are going to significantly weaken the laser weld between the motor shaft and the bell. I don't care if the motor is splined, knurled, it doesn't matter. You will 100% ruin that motor. And when you go to pull the prop off, or when you put the next prop on, that motor shaft will slip on the bell, and that motor is done. You can get the Loctite 638 retaining compound, and you can bring that bell back to life very temporarily, but it will not last. You'll get another like 1 or 2 propeller removals from it, and then it'll slip again, and the cycle will begin. It's not the retaining compound does not work good enough as a permanent fix. The permanent fix is, like many things, to preemptively be intelligent. Something that I don't understand why it is so hard to understand here. And so yeah, $10, 2 drill bits before you put a propeller on, or when you're putting a propeller on and you start to push really hard, stop, take it off, drill it out, stop wasting money and time. Mario Bean says, is a 7-minute flight time pretty standard for 2S Walksnail build? I'm running 14,500 kV on mine, flies great. 7 minutes is extremely long for a flight time. Most people are happy with a 3-minute runtime. 3 minutes is kind of the sweet spot in my opinion. It's just long enough where you can really get into it. And it's not so long that that you're dragging around extra weight. To each his or her own. Like if 7 minutes is the sweet spot for you, that's totally fine. But I think what I can say is those of us that fly really hard are totally happy with 3 minutes. And when you start flying really hard, it's difficult to get more than 3 minutes if you want the rig to be as light as it possibly can, which is where it kind of performs the best. And so, yeah, anything north of 3 minutes is great. 7 minutes is a bit much for me. I would try to go to a smaller, but if I had a rig that was running for 7 minutes, I would be exhausted by the end of that 7 minutes. That's kind of the other thing. Like when you're flying really hard freestyle, it is mentally taxing as hell. And so at the end of 3 minutes, I want a break. Like I want to be able to take a breather and just chill for a second. Because yeah, like hard freestyle is just go, 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 right? You're in proximity to stuff that can destroy the build for the entire time. You're going full throttle, you're shooting tiny little gaps, you're going fast, you're going slow. Like it is a yeah, it is not so. And so yeah, 7 minute runtime, you're probably carrying around a battery that's a little bit too heavy. It could also be though that you've got 14,500 kV motors. That's going to be a really efficient motor. For me, my 2S Walksnail build, I have it set to like the equivalent of 16 or 17,000 kV motors because I want that extra power, and that extra power is going to use extra juice. So yeah, your motors might be super efficient, but I have a feeling you're running a 2S 450 mAh battery rather than the 2S 300 mAh batteries. So if it were me, I would drop down to the 300 mAh batteries, bring that flight time down to like 3 or 4 minutes. The rig's going to fly better. It's going to crash better. Yeah. But again, that's just me. You're allowed to want a rig that flies 7 minutes, and you're allowed to sacrifice flight performance and power to weight ratio for flight time if that's what you want, right? I try really hard not to talk about like best, right? I just talk about different. I just talk about the specific attributes of stuff so that you guys can make up your own minds and build the rig that's perfect for you. I'm very wary of anybody that talks about like, you know, this is the best bind and fly ever. This is the best motor ever. This is the best battery ever. Usually those are people that just don't get it. So yeah, as soon as you see somebody talking about best, be very wary. Ray's FPV says, you mentioned in another video that there was a ratio to keep in mind for motor numbering. If I'm not mistaken, it's better to have a wider stator than taller in certain instances. Yeah, so, hey baby. So 3-to-1, you basically don't typically want to go any taller than 3-to-1. 5-inch rigs have had the deepest R&D cycle out of anything in FPV. So they are a perfect spot to take a look at for stuff like this. And so when you look at the motor sizing that like everybody runs, that is obviously the best motor sizing that we've found in millions of batteries being flown on 5-inch rigs from people around the globe, right? It's 2306 and 2207. 2207, 7 tall, so 7, 14, 21. Almost a perfect 3-to-1 ratio. 2306, 6, 12, 18, 24. 23, 24. 4-to-1 ratio. 2306 motors make a little bit less power, but they run a little bit cooler. A wider motor has more motor width, and that's going to be more of the bell that's in the airflow coming down off the propeller. Also, it just makes less power. And when you make less power, you have less heat. 2207, that extra millimeter of height makes a bunch more power. The height of the stator makes way more power than the width of the stator. So if you add a millimeter of height to one motor and you add a millimeter of width to another motor, the motor that you added the extra height to is going to make way more power for two reasons. The one reason is that if you're going from 6 to 7, the percentage change is massive. That's like a 12 or 13 or 14% change in the height of the stator. If you take a 22 millimeter wide motor and you go to 23 millimeters, that's like a 6% or 4% change. So just the percentage of change has a tremendous amount to do with that. But if you were to add that extra millimeter, 6 to 7, and then you were to take that percentage and use that same percentage, I think basically what you would do is you would take a 22 millimeter wide stator and you'd go to like 24 or even 25, but leave it 6 millimeters tall. It still would not make as much power as that 2207 because of the second factor, which is that the height is where the stator windings make their most power. The vertical part of the stator winding is what pulls that magnet in. When you go wider on the motor, you don't add any extra height. You just space it out farther, which is a longer lever, right? It's like putting a breaker bar on the lug nut wrench, right? Longer lever. Yes, it's going to impart more mechanical torque, but it's not nearly as effective as the taller stator that's physically pulling. It's adding more of that vertical part that's pulling the magnet across. The other thing that happens is if you were to add like 3 millimeters of width to a motor, that motor would get way heavier versus adding 1 millimeter of height to a motor. It doesn't get nearly as heavy. So I guess that's also the third thing that's sort of going on there. But the long and short of it is, for hardcore freestyle, where you're trying to squeeze every bit of performance out, 3-to-1 is the way to go. That's going to give you the lightest possible motor that has just enough cooling. But if you push it really, really, really hard, you can start to overheat it. If you want a more, what's the word? If you want a more, reliable is not the word. Not reliable. Oh god damn. If you want a motor that every single time you hammer the throttle, it gives you the exact same amount of power because it's always cool, right? A 3-to-1 motor, if you hammer it hard enough, that motor will get hot. And when the magnets get hot, they make less power and they're less efficient. And so with a 3-to-1 motor, if you push it hard enough, there could be a situation where you were hard on the throttle, you overheated the motor, you came off the throttle, something happens, you go back to full throttle, expecting to get the same amount of power, but you won't. I can't think of the word for this, but somebody's probably already typing it in the chat. That happens way more with 2-to-1 ratio motors. 3-to-1 is pretty safe, but technically speaking, 4-to-1 is where you want to be for total. Every single time you hammer the throttle, it gives you the same amount of power. I keep thinking of reliability. It's not reliability. It's predictability. Thank you, CBR. Predictability. For absolute infinite predictability, 4-to-1 seems to be the best mix, where the motor's not getting super heavy because it's too wide. But so now we throw Cinewhoops into the mix. All right. So a Cinewhoop is carrying, actually up there now. Cinewhoops are carrying a big ass payload, right? 120, 130 gram GoPro on a 3-inch rig. So what you want to think about with Cinewhoops is like they're kind of off on their own. They're a weird fringe case. But we can take these lessons that we've learned and adapt them. So with Cinewhoop motors, you'll see 5-to-1. You'll even see 6-to-1. This is because we're willing to sacrifice a little bit of a heavier motor for a rig that is, again, totally predictable. Every single time you hammer the throttle, you get the exact same amount of power because the motor is extra wide to stay nice and cool. So 2004s, 2104s, 2304s, that's why you're seeing those really wide, really flat motors on Cinewhoops. What's super interesting is the Avata and the Avata 2, they use a 1507-ish motor. The reason is that they're prioritizing, they don't seem to really give a rat's ass about flight performance. They do, but not as much as us. They have prioritized lightweight and runtime. And a 2-to-1 motor is significantly lighter than a 4-to-1 or a 5-to-1 motor. This is why the Avatas fall out of the sky when you try to push them hard. The motors overheat. But most people that are going to buy an Avata are not going to fly them hard. And so they get away with it. And the benefit is absurd amounts of runtime. So it's tough. With the DJI rigs, they can do things like digitally limiting the amount of power that the thing asks from the motors, right? So they can do all kinds of fancy shit because they have an R&D team working on it, top to bottom. We can't do that. So if we build a Cinewhoop with a 1507 and we push too hard on the throttle and let it sit and let the motor saturate, you can potentially blow an ESC FET, have it fall out of the air in the same way. All kinds of weird shit happens. DJI can kind of cover that up a little bit with the flight software that they design in-house, right? So, like, if you wanted to build something as close as possible to an Avata, you'd probably want to go like a 3-to-1 ratio because you don't get that technical wizardry that they give you. Makes sense? Good question. I love talking about that shit, as if you couldn't guess. Northern Tier says, what 2S 75mm frame did you end up liking the best for Walksnail? Both of the Mobula frames. The Mobula 7 V3 is my favorite, but the V4 is also good. My main gripe, what's nice about the V4 frame is it's lighter, but the mega pain in the ass about it is that you have to notch out the duct here in order to get access to the JST port that you use instead of USB. There is no USB port on the bottom of this BetaFPV AIO, which I like. And unbelievably, the Mobula 7 V3 frame comes with the ducts notched out on the inside here, and so you have perfect access. The only problem with the Mobula 7 V3 frame is that it's designed for 3mm tall motors, not 2mm tall motors. So when you run a 2mm tall motor, you have to use risers. See that little clear piece between the frame and the... No, you don't, because Logitech can't make a fucking autofocus algorithm that works worth a shit. Yeah, well, it's in there. A 2mm tall motor will sit too low in the duct. And so... but what's nice is the Air 65 and Air 75 frames come with these little motor risers. The problem is trying to find a set of motor screws that are long enough to use with these risers. BetaFPV does not give you those. And I don't know where you would get those. I just happen to have a bunch of them because I've been hoarding screws, FPV screws, for the last 8+ years. So, yeah, I've got a set somewhere in here, but I don't I don't have enough to sell them to you guys. So, yeah, Whoever figures that out, let me know, and I'll put a link up so that other people can find them. Speaking of, I actually need to grab a set of those motor screws because I'm going to be screwing these RCinpower 1002s down to a V3 frame. So let me just do that real quick, like while I answer the next question. Eric Hallman says, "Did you ever try a 1S Walksnail on a 75 Pro?" I did. The extra weight of the 75 Pro frame and the bigger propellers basically push it over the edge to where you end up draining the batteries even quicker, and it's just no good. It adds too much weight. It's much better on the 75 setup. Also, it starts really hitting the batteries hard. So you're gonna go from, like, you do gain a little bit of power to weight ratio, don't get me wrong. But you start killing the batteries in like 1 minute and 15 seconds if you fly hard. And that's just, I mean, that's a great way to get rid of a bunch of batteries because they're just going to get so hot doing that they absolutely melt. So yeah, it's just not, it's not a great combo, unfortunately. Also, the rig starts to get so heavy that like it feels like you're flying a brick around. So yeah, I was ultra excited about that, but it didn't end up working. There we go. All right. So yeah, those are the screws. Hey, does anybody happen to know? We can actually, I can tell you what these screws are that you need to get, but who in chat knows what these motor screws are? Are these M1.2 or are they M1.4? Does anybody know? Does anybody know what the Tiny Whoop motor screws are? I can tell you for a fact that the length you're going to need is 4 millimeters long. This is an M1 point something by 4. And this is the right length for a Mobula 7 V3 frame with the motorizers. Well, any normal frame other than the Cockroach V3 and Lite AF, because all the other frames have the same thickness motor base, and then these motorizers. So hopefully in chat someone has already typed, yes, I know for a fact that the motor screws are, my guess is M1.4. Don't quote me on that, but that is my guess. So I think what you need is M1.4 by 4, and you can probably just jump onto eBay and grab a bag of 100 of those for like $10. So yeah, good question, Eric Hallman. ThrashFPV says, how would you program LEDs on a Switch? Oh man, I don't know. I've tried for like 2 hours and just can't figure it out. My only guess would be that I would maybe hook them up to the beeper switch and treat them like a beeper, but I just don't know. Who in chat knows how to hook LEDs up on a Switch? Somebody probably does. ThrashFPV says, if an LED light is rated for 1S, but I wire 2 in parallel, would this cut the voltage in half where I could run it on 2S? Man, I am not a great resource for info on electricity. I have zero background in anything electrical. Everything that I've learned has been from FPV. I always get confused with series versus parallel, to give you an idea of how dumb I am when it comes to electricity. So yeah, I am not the guy, but I bet you somebody in chat has either already answered that question or is typing their answer now, because we got some smart-ass motherfuckers in this place. So, Cheetonian says, why does nobody make 9mm motors? Is there some sort of negative voodoo or something? Lack of market. If enough of us said, hey, we need 9mm motors, somebody would make them. But yeah, Off Axis says, with great force comes great responsibility. Indeed. Changing to making a 9mm motor means that a company needs to get like all new molds or whatever the hell they use to make the bells and the stators and shit, and that's expensive, right? So it's much cheaper for them to stick with 7mm, 8mm, 10mm, 11mm. Going to 9mm is a lot more expensive than just making a bigger 8mm wide motor or a smaller 10 mil wide motor, if you know what I mean. Cheetonian says, I need a break to wipe my sweaty palms after no more than 3 minutes. Yeah, exactly. Earthwalker says, I think 450 is the sweet spot for cruising around the yard. 300 if you're good at acrobatics like CiottiFPV. Raze says, thank you for the explanation. Makes sense. Awesome. Oh man, the chat. I was going to start doing stuff over here, but the chat is just like filled up with good shit. Hold on. 1B67-4H says, with the new 04 Lite coming out, supposedly 1S to 3S, 10-ish grams, what build pops into your head? All of these Walksnail builds. We are perfectly placed to make amazing 04 Lite builds. So yeah, for once we'll be ahead of the curve, my friends. It's easy to start thinking, oh well, we should go up to 2mm props. In doing so, the frame is going to get so much bigger, the prop guards are going to stick out farther, and that's going to become the problem. So 75 is the way. This 75mm rigs are the perfect spot for the biggest propellers that we can possibly run without having the ducts stick so far out that half of your view on the bottom of the screen is duct. But they're also big enough where you can carry a 2S 300, 2S 450. So yeah, it's 75 mil. You're going to see most people doing 2-inch builds, guaranteed, because they haven't put the time in that we have. But yeah, 75 absolutely will be the way. That 04 Lite setup is supposedly going to be 10 grams. The Walksnail setup is 6 grams. This 2S rig will absolutely handle 4 extra grams of weight all day long. So we'll still be able to do a similar build to this where the camera is nice and centered. You're not having to hang the camera all the way over the front ducts, which overloads the front motors. And then you got to go to front bigger motors, more weight, bigger battery, more weight, bigger frame, more weight. Like 2 inches, not the way for that setup for freestyle. For a Cinewhoop, I don't know, maybe. I would actually rather stick with 75 though. But with a Cinewhoop, you have to get the ducts out of view, and you have to be able to run really low to no up tilt. So they'll probably have to go to a 2-inch setup, but for freestyle, it's going to be this. It's going to be this build that we've been working on for many months. So that's going to be amazing. Unfortunately, it looks like that 04 Lite VTX is not going to be, don't quote me on this, but it looks like it's not going to be drilled for 25 by 25. It's going to be 30 by 30. So we're probably not going to be able to do a build like this unless somebody comes out with a 75 mil frame that's set up for 30 by 30. And then we got to try to find an AIO that's got ELRS built in, right? That's 30 by 30. So it might be a bit of a nightmare in that respect. If that's the case, it'll probably be all 2-inch stuff because that's just what's going to happen. The 2-inch frames that come out that are 30 by 30, the frames that come out that are going to be 30 by 30 are going to be 2-inch frames. I don't even know if you could, I don't even know how that would work. I don't even know how you would do a 30 by 30 AIO in a 75 mil frame. It might start to look really dumb where there's a ton of space in between the props. But yeah, hopefully that VTX is 25 by 25 and fits in the Mobula 7 V3 frame. But I doubt it because the O3 system is way more sophisticated than the Walksnail setup, and that shit takes space. So I think it'll be. My guess is that it's going to be a whole separate thing. But I mean, you know, welcome to FPV. Tiny Shark says you don't use dynamic idle, VBAC compensation, and thrust linearization on your 2S Walksnail build. Do I not have those turned on? That is 100% an oversight. That is me just being used to the 1S builds. Thank you for calling that out because digital idle is awesome. And it pains me to not use it on the 1S builds. The other ones, thrust linearization, the VBAC compensation and thrust linearization, 2S doesn't necessarily need those, I don't really think, although VBAC compensation I am probably going to turn on because that helps with throttle expo, and I have a lot of throttle expo dialed into this thing. So I am actually probably going to turn that one on. But dynamic idle, not digital idle, dynamic idle is awesome. Oh, that's, you know what? Okay. So for whatever reason, BetaFPV, the BetaFPV Cross AIO and this 12 amp AIO, they don't work with dynamic idle. I don't know what it is, but yeah, dynamic idle just does not work on those two AIOs. So that's why this is turned off. VBAC sag compensation, though, I am absolutely going to turn on. Thrust linear, yeah, what the hell. I'm going to turn it down to 10%, though. Thank you, dude. Good call on that. But yeah, the dynamic idle, it makes me sad that I can't use it. But it just don't work. I tried. On every other 1S AIO, you can use that dynamic idle. The devs say not to, which is why I don't. But yeah, on both BetaFPVs, for whatever reason, it doesn't work. They're doing something funky that doesn't jive with that turkey. Ray says also, man, that explains a ton. CMYK is in the house. Thank you for dropping the CiottiFPV.com link. That's where you can go to support me. This is a completely crowdfunded thing. Join the Patreon. That's the best thing you can do, and you get tons of benefits. You're going to love it. LOL the Kiddison says, what do you think of Zoe FPV's upcoming 2010 motors? So they are 2010s. I thought that was a typo. 2010, as we were talking about a little bit ago, that's a motor that's going to make a hideous amount of power, but it's probably going to overheat. That is a 2. Oh, for fuck's sake. God damn it, Canon. Fix your fucking software. Jesus Christ. So yeah, that in my opinion, that motor is going to overheat if you run it hard. But it will be super efficient if you don't run it very hard. So yeah, there's a use for everything. Brandon's Baked Beans thinks that the motor screws are M1.2. I don't think they are. He says, I don't know, maybe it's 1.3. LOL the Kiddison says, I thought 1.4. Off Axis says M1.4. I think Cheatonian just says M1.4. He didn't put an I think in there. So that sounds pretty dead set. Earthwalker says 1.4. Okay, it's 1.4. A whole bunch of you guys are saying Freelojo thinks it's M1.2. I have M1.2 that I use for the canopy. Actually, I have them right here. I can look and tell you for certain that they're not. Oh, well, here, this is one. This is so this is the screw that comes with. Yeah, no, it's definitely not 1.2. This is the screw that comes with. Here, I'll even show you guys. That comes with the Mobula 6 canopy. And so here's the comparison, right? This is M1.2. And then this is what the Tiny Whoop motor screws are. And so oh yeah, there's totally a difference there, right? So ignore the fact that this one is sharp on the tip. Just look at the main shank. And yeah, this is 1.2 millimeters wide. This is obviously 1.4. Technically, this could be M1.6. Oh, I have a caliper. What am I doing? I've actually never done this. I'm assuming that is the width of these. I will tell you in a second. Hold on. So, caliper life. Let's solve this once and for all. All right, caliper. Screw. I'm going to clamp down on the main part, and that says 1.18. That is a 1.2. So there's that. And then you go up there, and then we've got a motor screw. And if we squeeze this fucker, huzzah. 1.34. Call that 1.4. I don't think there is such a thing as M1.3. I'm pretty sure it's M1.4. So yeah, M1.4 by 4 is what these screws are that you're going to see me using in a little bit on this frame. I'm actually going to start doing that now, even though I'm backed up on chat. I'm gonna start doing it. I'll start juggling chat and working on this thing. M1.4 by 4. That's what I got right here. So I need to take these are regular M1.4 by 2, I guess. I guess the regular motor screws are either M1.4 by 2, or they could also be M1.4 by 3. Doesn't really matter. You guys all have extra Tiny Whoop motor screws coming out of your ears, I'm sure. You know, you get them with every single set of motors you buy. They're just all over the place. So yeah, it doesn't really. You're not going to need to buy more of those. God forbid you do need to buy more regular Tiny Whoop motor screws. I have thousands of them. I probably actually do have thousands of them. They're up on the Etsy store in, I think, silver. Yeah, don't buy them from eBay or Amazon or something like that. Buy them from me, or else I'll be very upset with you. Nah, do whatever you want. Okay. Oh, look, YouTube just shit the bed. Man, all the problems are coming back. I had like 2 or 3 live streams where everything worked totally fine, and now everything is a big fat douchebag again. Cheetonian says, what would your dynamic idle setting be for 2S? 30 is the best starting point. And then if the motors are stalling out, go up to like 40. But yeah, I like it at 30. And 30 usually works. Freelojo says, LED on LED on, more voltage needs as resistor, no matter the number of LEDs. There you go. Whoever was asking about LEDs. Looks like Mario Beans is also giving some good info. Look on the Pavo 35 CLI and webpage instructions. Shows you how to do it. Tiny Shark FPV says, do you think the 2S HD setup would handle a naked 03? No. Yeah, naked 03 is 18 grams, or would that be the limit for 2S? I mean, it depends on what you mean by handle. Like, will it pick it up and move it around? Yeah. But you're basically going to have like a tiny lifter there, so it's going to fly like ass. If you're okay with that, then yeah, you're just going to have to figure out how the hell to package it, right? Because it's a big, tall bastard. But yeah, it's not going to be for freestyle. It's going to be a 100% like little tiny Cinewhoop / tiny lifter. I'll say this. It'll fly closer to a Cinewhoop than a lifter. My tiny lifters fly like lifters in that they fly like ass because it's a 26 gram camera. An 18 gram camera, that is fat, but it's not like outrageous fat. So like the way that Cinewhoops fly, where like they fly a lot better than lifters, but nowhere near as good as freestyle rigs, that's basically what you would have. Justin Muller says, where's Teddy? I think he's upstairs. Cheetonian says, I bought a set of all length M1.2, 1.4, 1.6 Amazon. I'm sure. There we go. So yeah, it is confirmed from multiple places. M1.4 is what motor screws are. Tiny Whoop motor screws are. Kevin Smith measured as well, 1.38. Yep, we're good. Thank you, guys. Neuron FPV says, with the less than 10 gram 04 Lite 1S, do you think it will be a big revival for 2S 75mm? Thanks for all the work. So if you missed it, Neuron, I dove into that about 10 minutes ago. I think you probably asked that question right on top of me talking about it. Yeah, from the specs that I saw, it's going to be 30 by 30. So it's not going to work on any of these 25 by 25s. It's going to be a packaging nightmare. So yeah, we'll see. In terms of how much it weighs, at like 10-ish grams, we already know what motors are going to work, so we're in good shape. But the packaging of it is going to be a nightmare. Cheetonian says, Cockroach comes with M1.4 by 3. Awesome. Most motors need M1.4 by 4, M1.4 by 5 to use the risers, in my opinion. I measured these on the front of the Omni Fixo, which is not perfect, but it's pretty close. Let me double check. Yeah, no, this is definitely M1.4 by 4. I thought the screws that the Cockroach comes with were M1.4 by 2. And then the regular Tiny Whoop motor screws are M1.4 by 3. And then with the risers, 1.4 by 4. I can totally be wrong, though. EFI says, are the fractional frames better than your normal plastic frames? Nope, they are worse in every way. Worse power to weight ratio, worse efficiency, worse camera mounting, worse durability. Earthwalker says, have you tried or heard anything about the X12 ELRS Pro? I've not. I know that it exists, but I haven't heard anything about it. Cheetonian says, you're right, I'm off by 1 across the board. All right, cool. Good to go. All right. Neuron says, thanks for the answer, the late guy. No worries. It's all good. Yeah, rewind back. I dove into it. But the long and short of it is, it looks like that, and it makes sense, right? They're taking 2 boards and combining them into 1. How the hell would they keep the same sizing? But that being said, if having an 04 system on a Tiny Whoop, that is outrageous, and I will re-engineer everything to be able to have that. Like, that is worth all new frames. That is worth all new everything. Like, that's ridiculous to have the video performance that a Nevada 2 has, which is basically better than GoPro Hero 12 and 13, but on a tiny whoop. Like, that is outrageous. If we have to, if it's new frames, if it's new mounting, if it's new all that stuff, that's totally cool. That's wild, man. That is absolutely wild that might exist. Hopefully there's not some asinine bullshit that pops up at the last second that's like, oh, by the way, nope, you can't use this with any actual FPV stuff. You have to buy only DJI, whatever. I guess, oh, you know what I have a feeling, I hope this is not true, because I've not heard great things about the quality, but the Neo, $199, whatever the hell you would want to call that thing, I'm gonna take a wild guess that the 04 Lite is what's in that. That's based on nothing other than that that thing is very lightweight. And so, I don't know, it'll almost certainly be better quality than Walksnail, so it'll still be, like, awesome. But, yeah. Because, like, there's no way that they made that just for us. DJI has made it pretty evident that they have no interest in the actual FPV community. And so I'm not buying that they made that just for us. It makes way more sense to me that they designed that for the Neo, and then, just like they always have, a while later, they're like, oh yeah, here, you guys can have the scraps. We made this thing for one of our things, but we can make some more money off you guys, so, like, yeah, I guess you can kind of have a version of it. We won't update it as frequently, and we won't listen to a goddamn thing you say about, like, oh, OSD, or having it auto power on, or any of the other things that really matter to you. But we'll give you this thing, and then you guys can kind of figure it out on your own and spend thousands of hours hacking it and figure, you know what I mean? So that's my guess. That's my guess. What does anybody know what the Neo specs are? Is it 4K? I'm pretty sure I read in the specs of the 04 Lite that it is going to be 4K. My assumption is going to be, though, that the bitrate is significantly lower. Look, taking a big-ass 04 air unit and squashing it into one single board, we're going to lose something. And that's okay, because it's still going to be almost certainly, like, amazing. But we're going to have to lose something. Know what I'm saying? Man, these screws are, like, just long enough. I wish I had M1.4x5s to try on here, but these are definitely long enough. And if I screw them in a couple times, they'll squash through this plastic a little bit. But I really try to have a little bit of the screw sticking out of the top of the stator, and this is not quite there. But the ducts are going to take most of the hit, so it's probably completely fine. And on the other rig, I've crashed it a bunch with this same exact setup, and it's been completely fine. So yeah, once I get these motors on here, we're going to be able to compare the RCinpower 1002 19,000s to the T-Motor 1002, either 18 or 19,000s. And Rosser has tested a bunch of tiny whoop motors, and he's tested a couple of T-Motors, and he's tested a couple of RCinpowers, and the RCinpower tiny whoop motors blow the T-Motors out of the water. So it's kind of cool, because I'm totally happy with the way that the 2S Walksnail 75 rig flies with the T-Motor 1002 18 19,000s, which means that these RCinpowers are going to be even better, which is amazing. So I'll either be able to get a little bit more runtime or a little bit more power or whatever. So yeah, This is pretty cool. I don't know why that first set of motors I bought were T-Motor. It's weird that I didn't get RCinpower 1002 19,000s right off the rip. But whatever. We like comparisons. T-Motor makes great motors. It's just that RCinpower is like killing it with their smaller motors. And making smaller motors is different. Oh, shit. Where'd that screw go? There it is. Cheatonian says, please test these against the 1102 BetaFPV as well. Yep, indeed. Those felt great. They felt a little heavy, though. I mean, they are. They are a little heavy. But yeah, man, they had some fucking grunt. As soon as I turned the... They're the same KV as the T-Motor 1002s. And what's interesting is at 75% motor limiting, there was a definite difference between the two. The 1102s felt better, even though they were heavier. All I had to do on the T-Motor 1002s, though, was go from 75% motor limiting to 80% motor limiting, and then they felt just as good. And they're lighter. So hopefully these RCinpowers will have the grunt of the Beta 1102s, but, I mean, they are lighter, so they'll absolutely be lighter. But then, yeah, hopefully they'll have that extra power and or a little bit of extra efficiency. They should be more efficient because they're lighter, right? And so we should get better flight performance and better efficiency from these. But I will say, man, the BetaFPV 1102s in 22,000 kV and in 18,000 kV are really impressive. They are a hell of a motor. And they're not that much heavier than these 1002s. So you never know. We might end up going back to those. This rig felt incredible with those motors. It felt like a full tilt freestyle rig. It felt like I was just flying a tiny little 5-inch rig in the front yard. And I know that's a dumb thing to say because nothing actually flies like 5-inch. But like in terms of flight characteristics, and basically what I'm saying here is that it felt perfect, right? Like when you fly a properly, not even properly, a somewhat dialed in 5-inch rig, it flies fucking perfect. Everything that you want it to do, it does. And it does it in this way that like it seriously seems like it's reading your mind. The response time is so quick. It just does everything right. The throttle resolution feels great. It's just there. It's like the perfect flight experience. On the 1102s, it felt just like that. When I turned the 1002s up to 80%, it felt super similar. Maybe it wasn't quite there. I have a feeling on these RCinpowers, though, it will be. I have a funny feeling that these are the missing link. There it is. So here it is right now on the T-Motor 1002 18,000s, 80% motor limiting. I'm going to put a battery through this in the basement. We're going to take a look at the RPM, the max RPM, and then I'm going to swap this over as quick as I can, and we'll see. We'll see if we can get some more max RPM out of the RCinpower motors. Even if we don't get extra, I'm not sure that I'm not sure that in the basement we're gonna have enough time to leave this thing full throttle to let the motors wind all the way up. But I'm gonna fly both of these things in the same environment. So if the RCinpowers make a higher RPM, that's still totally valid as far as I'm concerned. Which is probably what we're gonna see here. I'm going to bleed over on top of whoever is live streaming at 9 o'clock. I apologize to whoever that is for that. I think it's Spider Sugar because it's not the last Friday of the month when bot streams. And then I think it's also going to be Super Deluxe. So I apologize to you two fine fellows. But yeah, I want to get this in. I want to get this going here. Tiny Shark says, is there a big difference between T-Motor, RCinpower, and Flywoo 1002 motors? Absolutely. The Flywoo 23,500s perform no better than the RCinpower 1002 22,000s. So you might as well get the RCinpower motors. The T-Motors perform worse. So yeah, RCinpower 1002 22,000s are the best. Well, BetaFPV 1102 22,000s are actually the best. Then the RCinpowers, then the Flywoo, then the T-Motor. Cheatonian says, I'm almost 100% sure BetaFPV is underrating their KV. I am 100% sure that BetaFPV underrates their KV. Cheatonian says, do you have the HQ bi-blades? I do, but they are too fragile. They break all the time. All right. So get a couple of these for sale things out of the way here. And let's get this plugged in. Let me put a memory card in this. That's fine. Fuck it. I'm just going to be blasting full throttle a bunch. Okay. So, let's get this going. This is going to be sketchy as shit. I hate flying this thing in the house. Although, it does staggeringly well inside the house. Like, this flies way better than it should in the house. It's because the response time is just, like, on it. So I can fly it better. The 75mm 1S rigs, the response time is so delayed that they're really hard to fly inside the house. Did I not turn these goggles on? I did not. All right, don't overheat, you little bastard. Cheatonian says, 0.9 gram total difference across 4 motors between 1002 and BetaFPV 1102. Yeah, the Beta 1102s are really light for what they are. It's really, really impressive. I don't know how they're doing that. Oh man, I gotta do that one of these days. Why is it not binding? Power cycle it real quick. Come on, you bastard. Don't not bind. Oh man, come on, really? Hold on. 1, 2, 3. Please be in bind mode. Please be in bind mode. Please be in bind mode. Bind, please. Yes. Thank you. Come on, cable. Stop doing that. Thank you. All right. Whoa. All right, so I'm just going to do a ton. I don't know why this is... Oh, it was in angle mode. Or, not angle. It was in horizon mode. Ah, fuck. All right, so we're looking at 54,387. Oh, my God. Something's... Oh, you know what? The battery is dingleberrying. I can tell it's dingleberrying. On this Mobula 7 V3 frame, yeah, the battery fell out. You got to do a wrap of cloth tape around your battery, or else it just falls right out of the frame super easily. Two of these batteries that I have the cloth wrap, and two of them don't. This is the ones that doesn't. If you're going to run the V4 frame, though, you don't want that cloth wrap. Whoo, my God, this thing is sketchy to fly around here. That was a pretty big throttle hit. Let's disarm and check that number. 53,867. So it looks like we're hitting that 54,000. Let me just real quick go upstairs and see if I can wind it up a little bit more than that. Jesus Christ. Okay, that's bad. 54,300. There we go. So we're getting to that 54,000 number. This is a good test. I'm happy with that. Whew. Yeah, that's about all I can squeeze out of it. That's what she said. This is sketchy. But fun. Oh my God. It hangs because of the power. I can get into and out of the throttle very quickly. 53,800. Yeah, so we're getting right to 54,000. Oh boy. I can get into and out of the throttle instantly. And even though... And it generates enough throw that even though this thing is a little bit heavier, it appears to float more. Which is what like all of the really heavyweight 800 gram 5-inch guys say. That's their somebody type 54,000 into chat, please. That's what all the super heavyweight 5-inch guys say. Oh, it doesn't matter that this is so heavy. It's got so much power that it's got plenty of hang time. And they're not wrong, but there's a difference between hang time caused by hammering up into the clouds and then having all of this lift and then the crest and then the fall versus lighter weight rigs that still have a good amount of throw upwards, but then on the way down, they fall slower because they're a lot lighter. This is not super heavy. This is only a little bit heavier than the 1S 75mm rig. So this is the right balance. That's one of the things that makes this such a blast to fly. So that is at 80% throttle limiting. We gotta remember that. We are going from 18,000 kV motors up to 19,000 kV motors. So initially I'm going to do, can somebody do the math for me? What do I need to change the 80% throttle limit to match up the kVs? So somebody multiply 18,000 by 0.8 and then figure out what you need to multiply 19,000 by probably like 0.78 to get that same number, please. Because I want to test, because I can just turn these T-motors up to 85%, you know what I mean, to get more power out of them. But that's not the point. I would rather run them both at the same kV. Although the problem is that the kV numbers stamped on the motor don't really mean much. So it's not, this is actually not a great test. What I really need to do is spin these T-motors up with no propeller on them at to see what they spin up to. I'm actually going to do that. Really quickly, I'm just going to plug in one of these motors. And so it's this motor 3. I'm going to pull the prop off of it. And then we're going to spin it up 50% in Betaflight. And we're going to get a proper We're going to do this the right way. So I need to hook up to Betaflight with this. Nope. That's with this. All right. In the motors tab, the motor limiting has no effect. So we need to remember that as well. We're going to have to do some math here. Who's good at math in the chat? Help a brother out. This battery is dead. We're going to take a fresh battery, plug it in. Let me get to the motors tab. And we're going to go to 50%. And we're going to see what the RPM is. That's modes, not motors. Whoever's good at math, hook a brother up. There we go. Cheatonian 0.76. Cold Power 75.78. Awesome. Neuron says 3 things I suck at: cooking and math. Nice. Motor 3. All right, cool. So I'm going to plug in, run motor 3 up real quick. Here it is, full battery. Motor 3, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 83,000. 83,000. Somebody type 83,000 into the chat. Get the battery unplugged right away. All right, 83,000 at 50% throttle. That's important to know. Now I got to switch this over, and we will take a look at what the RCinpower motors spin up to, and then we will do the math to figure out what we need to set the motor limiting to for this to be a fair fight between these two motors. Because nobody stamps the right KV onto their motor bells, unfortunately. As we've found from just running a lot of motors and or Chris Rosser's testing. All right, so this stack is coming on here. I should have maybe spun that down to a lower RPM. 83,000 is very close to the 85,000 maximum that that 8-bit ESCs have in terms of how much RPM they can dump into a motor. That is with no propeller on, so that doesn't really matter for us. Like when we fly these things, propeller. When we fly these things, we fly them with propellers. And the propellers slow the motors down a lot. And so, yeah, it doesn't matter that 8-bit... You'll never turn anywhere near 85,000 RPM with a propeller on your motor. That I have a feeling that would actually cause the tip of the propeller to go through the speed of sound, and it would start to go banana pants when that happens. You cannot spin propellers fast enough that the tip speed is any closer than, like, I think it's like 80%, 80 to 85% of the speed of sound. The efficiency goes completely out the window. The propeller blades start to vibrate and go crazy. It's yeah, you can't do it. All hell breaks loose. All right. Stack and canopy are in the other frame. This is good. I'm going to have to go back into Betaflight anyway to get the motor spinning the right direction. So while I'm in there, I'll fire it up in the and get an RPM. So it should be higher. I have a sneaking suspicion that it's going to hit 85,000 and it's going to max out, which is why I kind of fucked up here, and I should have done it at a lower throttle value. And so I did 50% there. I should have done 40. I was in a rush. And I'm not really going to be able to notice inside the house, I don't think, whether or not these are making more power, because like I can only go full throttle for like a fraction of a second before it's rocketing towards another wall. But whatever. We'll do this real quick. If I need to redo this test, I will. I will almost certainly redo this test. I also need to do this test with the BetaFPV 1102s, and we're not doing that tonight. There will be another live stream comparing all three of these motors once I've spent some time on these RCinPowers. But we can get some good initial feedback here. This is the motor that I ran. Hold on, let me turn this transmitter off. Even if the motor is spinning in the wrong direction, that doesn't really matter. Cole Powers is exactly right. The propellers will flatten out as well. Okay, so here we go. Let's plug it back in here. All right, batteries plugged in. Connect. Motors. Understand the risks. Let's take motor 1 up to 50%. 50%? Oh, wow, it's way lower. 77,000. It is way lower. 77,000 on one. 77,000 on another. Okay, so T-Motor is horrendously under-speccing their motors. Their KV. 76,000, 77,000. Wow. Okay. Well, that is super important. Can somebody do the math for me? 83,000 versus 77,000. What is the difference needed in... No, the vibration you were hearing, Justin, was it sitting against the desk. The motor screws were vibrating against the desk. Wow, man. T-Motor, what are you doing? Or RCinpower, what are you doing? These RCinpowers are supposedly 19,000 kV. The T-Motors are supposedly 18,000 kV. I'm assuming... because in Chris Rosser's testing, 1 or 2 of the small T-Motor motors were way off. The KV was way, way, way wrong. And all of the RCinPower motors, the KV was pretty right. So, yeah, wow. What the hell? Ooh, the T-Motors are also very notchy in comparison. These RCinPowers might not make more power. These T-Motors might be a really powerful 1002. T-Motor makes great 5-inch motors. 7.8% difference. Thank you, dude. So, somebody check me on this. I think what that means is that I had these T-Motors on an 80% motor limit. So I think that means that I need to set the motor limit on these RCinPowers to 88%, right? Does that work out? 88% motor limiting? What am I doing? I got to plug this right back in because I got to get the motor spin in the right direction. With Walksnail, I always like get them unplugged instantly because I know it gets so hot. All right, plugging this back in. And connecting. And plugging the battery back in. Motors. Motor direction, wizard, start and spin. Motor 1 is wrong. 2 is wrong. 3 is wrong. 4 is wrong. They're all backwards. Hey! Wow, it's been a long time since this motor direction wizard has actually worked on a quad. And it worked on all 4. Excellent. Stop motors, close. 12 poles, great. disconnect. 88%. I'm just going to assume that that's the right math, and I'm going to go 88%. KV is not the whole story. If a motor is constructed better, if it has stronger magnets, if it has a tighter air gap in between the magnets and the stator poles, it will make more power to push the propellers to a higher RPM. So even though I'm moving this, like these motors might make more power, even though without a propeller on them, they're turning a lower KV. And like to some extent, you know, when you stamp a KV motor, a KV number onto a motor bell, what you're basically doing is stamping how much power it's going to make. And so there's yeah. KV is not the whole story. Let's see what kind of RPM this thing turns. What did we see on the other one? Was it 54,000? Let me scroll up in chat. 54,000. Okay. So let's see where this is. FPV unknown just got himself banned from the entire channel. Congratulations, dipshit. All right, good to go. And that shit froze. Awesome. All right, where is EOS webcam? There it is. No, I don't want to close. Okay, it's just dying on itself. Cole, you don't have to use much imagination to figure that out. Just think about the lack of intelligence that group of people has, right? That was a pretty mean thing to say. I apologize for that. Not all of them. Many, for sure. Not all, though. Told you I was gonna fucking freak out. Mods didn't even have a chance to see it, though. No blame on the mods whatsoever for that one. It popped up like, and I saw it instantly. All right, hold on. Hold on. I forgot that I need to put propellers on this thing. The really insane thing that is that the people that did this are the people that use exponentially more of the government programs that are going to get destroyed. And so they are exponentially making a worse life for themselves. It's just the whole thing, top to bottom, is beyond belief. And they're going to be the first ones that bitch and moan. It's just going to be... I mean, yeah, you guys know. You guys have functioning brains, so I don't have to explain this to you. But... And unfortunately, this is a situation where, like, I told you so just doesn't work, right? There is no I told you so here. Because it all burns for everyone. And, yeah. But, I mean, it's been like that for a long time, right? So, yeah. Take this up tilt down a little bit. Oh, boy. Hold on. Let me make sure that he's blocked for the entire channel, because you don't get this content if you're garbage. That's not how it works. You don't get to have this. you get to feel discrimination for once in your life. Why is ELRS not connecting? Do I have to rebind this thing every single time I turn it on? Is that the deal? Here it is. Settings. And community. And there it is. Hidden users. Good to go. All right. Simple. Simple, simple, simple. What the hell? What are you doing, little rig? You were totally fine. Now you're not. Okay. Strange. Sometimes that happens when you run a battery really low, but I did not do that, which is weird. All right, VTX is burning hot. Whoa, okay. Well, it's got plenty of power, I can tell you that. This battery is a little bit more discharged than the other one. Whew. Okay, let's just check what that was, because that's as big of a hit as I'm going to be able to get it. 55,950. Okay, so these motors make plenty of power. It's kind of too much, so let me just back it off a little bit. And so let's bring this... Screw it, let's bring it down to 80. Let's put this down to 80, and we'll see what RPM it turns. There's Teddy. Whoa! Oh, that was a hard hit. Oh boy, was that a hard hit. Oh man. It's the railing that got me. And knocked the up tilts all out. My God, this thing flies good inside the house for what it is, for as heavy it is. Oh, it's stuck. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go get that. Oh shit! When I disarmed a second ago, did anybody happen to catch what the max ESC RPM was? God damn it. Can somebody rewind? I'm just gonna be getting it off the thing. I won't do anything interesting. Somebody rewind. Please, 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 please. Thank you. Oh, that was wild. It was it was actually hung up on the it was hung up on the little hook of the micro V, like here. It was on the edge of the thing. I don't like that, actually. That was pulling on the UFL. I think this battery's pretty much shot. I'm gonna pull it. It's fine. 6X1 saw it 52,000. Okay, so yeah, going from 88% down to 80 brought us down a little bit. But the battery was dead. Let's throw another battery through it. We'll see if we can get it back up to that 55,000 number. That's it though. I'm gonna stop there. That crash upstairs was really nasty. I don't want to keep doing that with this. Upstairs is not the place for these. Hold on. Actually, also, I forgot to check the canopy screws to make sure that they were even, and they were not even at all. Okay, there we go. That's better. All right, so let's see. 55,000 before, 52,000 after. 52,717 on the crash. Thank you, guys. All right, fresh battery. We'll get it right upstairs. No, we'll do a couple blasts down here. That's what I did on the other motors. I did a couple blasts down here, and then I went upstairs. But it turned the same RPM upstairs and down here. Hey, look at that. It didn't need to be bound this time. That's awesome. This USB to HDMI cable is just useless. Try my best to keep an eye on OBS to make sure that you guys have video. All right, fully charged battery. Woo! My God. It's got like the same response time and power as like the 40,000 kV 702s and the 1S rigs, but it's way heavier. Like when you go to change direction, it's a whole different beast. Wow, that was sketchy as hell. That was a big full throttle blast rip, though. This should have the max kV. 54,500, almost the same. So, like 100 less RPM for motors that, from a kV standpoint, were 8% lower. If you ever needed an example of kV not being everything, there it is, my friends. Wow, this thing is ridiculous in here. It's just heavy. I mean, all these oh shit. All these 75s are heavy inside the house here. This is only a couple grams heavier than them, I should say. But this has all that power. Oh boy. Oh God. Oh my God. I can blip the throttle anywhere and throw this thing through these gates. This is reckless as shit in here. Oh, nope. Oh my God. The fact that I can do any of this stuff in the house is a testament to how good this build is. To the fact that 2S is the way. Wow. I didn't run the battery all the way down, but I don't want to break everything in sight. That is nutty. That is absolutely nutty. Whew! Okay. Last battery is just going to get... Well, no. I'll fly this last battery outside tomorrow. That's what I'll do. But for right now, you guys should go watch Super Deluxe or whoever else is streaming after me here. They've been streaming for a while, so go show them some love. Tell them Ciotti sent you. Thanks for coming. I'll see you guys on Sunday at 3 o'clock. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what... I wish there was anything that I could say to make anything better. But there's not. And it's going to be bad. It's going to be real bad for everyone. Especially the people that did this. But that's not that doesn't make it any better. That doesn't make it any better. This is just not an I told you so situation. So, best of luck. We're going to need it. I'm going to post something one more time that if you're not a coward, you should watch. If you're a coward, don't watch it. But there it is. You guys should watch that regardless of what side you're on. If you're on the side filled with love, then it's a lot of stuff that you already know. If you're on the other side, it's what you need to know. And if you're a coward, you won't watch it. But if you're not a coward, you should watch that. So do that. It's also on my Discord in General Nonsense at 1:50 p.m. There you go. Be good, friends. Best of luck to us all. I'll see you guys on Sunday. Here's some more of the 1S rig out in front of the house.